What up, friends? Robin back here. There's a UFC event this weekend. No way. There's one like every weekend except for Christmas. Like literally, me and Mark are sitting in here, hanging with you guys, talking about fights. That's the fucking coolest thing. I just can't even believe how comfortably we can do this now. And of course, this weekend, we got us some Lyoto Machida. I don't know why I'm overpronouncing his name. I was doing that earlier. I don't know why. And Derek Brunson. We also got Colby Covington versus Demian Maia. These are some badass fights. These are some legit fights. If you know me, you know that I like them all. And I really do. I really, really do. Why? Because what you are taking is humans who have developed a lifetime of artistic and physical skill. And you are taking those lifetimes, and in this moment in time, only this one, not 20 minutes from now, oh, fuck, I feel better than I did, or not earlier that day, or yesterday. Graham Dean was talking about how Jens Pulver told him, you know, sometimes on the Thursday before the fights, you're like, why can't it be today? I feel perfect. I'm on. I'm physical. I'm mental. I'm sharp. I'm rested. Not usually Thursday because that's the day before you weigh in, but for some people, who knows? But not that. It's tonight at this time exactly when Big John or whoever says go, now, and it's the only time. If you're lucky enough, you get a redo one day in the future, but this is the time. And they physically express themselves. Fighting is the truest form of physical expression. It's the song of the body. I've heard that somewhere. I think it was a term somebody used with yoga, but I like to use it with fighting. Fighting is the song of the body. Some people express that song like punk rock, all random and crazy. Some people express it like you know, classical music. That's what I hear when I see Cub Swanson fight. Some people express it like country music. They kind of Cowboy Cerrone, although there's a bit of a heavy metal vibe in him too. But they go out and they express themselves against somebody else that is trying to prevent them from accomplishing what they came to do. Two unwilling dance partners fighting it out. It's an incredible moment in time. And I really think we need to, if we can, really cherish it every time. And that's what we're going to do with these fights. These are some beautiful fights. Beautiful, beautiful fights. We'll talk about my boy Colby Covington. I call him my boy despite the fact that I've ever met him, because Jorge Masvidal just thinks he's the greatest. And Mike Brown, who I respect like immensely, considers him one of the greatest that he's ever trained with. And he's a badass against Demian Maia, one of the most skilled artists of combat ever. So we're going to talk about that. But first up, Lyoto Machida. I keep overpronouncing his name. I was saying earlier I'm super punchy. Really, because there are days where I'm just like, this is what we get to do. You know? Now, over the last couple of days, we made 6 or 8 YouTube videos, a bunch of stuff chatting about fighting on Instagram, talked on Facebook Live, talked on Periscope, chatted over at TSN, wrote a thing, analyzed some stuff for ACB in Russia. You know, on it, this is just what we do. It's fucking amazing. I can't even believe it. And so we get to see this fight. And so Machida, that's why I'm punchy, and that's why I'm overpronouncing his name and saying stupid shit. Lyoto Machida is brilliant, right? And you don't know this, but now you do. We had a little with our camera. And so we were talking about this, Mark and I and the camera earlier, about Machida, and how there was a time where we didn't understand him. And I don't mean you or me, although you and me didn't, let's be honest. I mean we, fighting, the art of free fighting, UFC, mixed martial arts. He was just very, very different. When he won that fight and became the champion, my man, this guy, Rogan, fuck, that guy's a genius, eh? Got a new studio. Congrats, man. Congrats. That's really fucking killer. Excited for you. Joe said, welcome to the Machida era. Now, we have a bad habit of then, I think he lost to Shogun next. Like he lost soon after. And it's like, oh, Joe, it's not the Machida era. And I'm not trying to imitate anyone in particular. Somebody says... Yeah. Oh, yeah. He lost to Jones. So it was a draw or something against, the first Shogun fight.
Yeah, the first Shogun fight. No, he defended
Yeah. I was in Montreal when Shogun won the belt. This is a side story. And it was incredible, an incredible moment. Him and his guys, some of whom you've seen around a lot, it's all his longtime translator and a few of these guys. He's been traveling with a lot of the same guys. And he's shirtless. Some of them are throwing their clothes around. And I'm here. And I don't know, I can't sing in Portuguese. I wish I could because it would make the story better. And I hear louder, and it's them. And they're holding the belt and they're dancing together. 5 men. One of them still naked from the chest up, sweaty, holding up the belt, and they're dancing, and it gets quieter. And we all kind of laughed, and a couple of minutes go by, and then it's louder, and as they come around the lap again, they're still dancing. They're singing and dancing, and it was so joyous. And when you get to, I wish somebody taped that so you could see it, because it really, you saw just pure, true joy. True joy. And that's why these guys fight. They feel it. To win a fight against a professional athlete and the glory and the victory and the pride that you feel, never mind that belt. And that's why I started talking today before I got into this fight, which we still haven't got into. But that's what you can do when you have long-form podcasting, they're fighting for that. There's that joy. That's so much on the line. It means so much to them. And that's why I think we should treat it as special as it is. But so back then we would look, and when Joe said the Machida era, he was right. It doesn't matter if you win or lose the next fight. That's not what he's saying. Predictions, you can't predict the future. But there was an era in which this man was going to change fighting, and he did. Whether everybody fights like him or not, understanding what he did taught you where the seams in the 3 dimensions of the fight were. Where the spaces, the things that weren't done. And everybody used parts of it. So whether they came out like Machida, in the gi or whatever, or they didn't, they filled in some of the puzzle of their understanding of fighting. And there's still a lot of gaps in that thing. If it was a puzzle, I bet it's not even 20% full. I know we think, man, we know so much about fighting. But that's what they thought here. And we look at what they knew then. And when we look 60 years in the future, we'll realize how little we know. There's going to be further breakthroughs. They may be more subtle, and they'll require a little more, experience and connection to it to see, but they'll be just as dramatic. But everybody took those things that Machida did with space and push and pull, and full body feints and all of those things. Everybody either uses it or knows how to fight against it. And that was a conversation that I had with Firas Zahabi not that long ago about that. Is the legacy of people like that, whether they'll get their due or not, is how they truly change the organism that is the knowledge of fighting. And it is an organism. It's a technology, and it's a constantly changing technology. And by the time people figure out how to beat that thing, they've learned that thing. It's become a part of the skin and the fabric of fighting itself. That's what Machida did. But in teaching us all that, he taught us how to beat him, right? How to beat that thing that he brought in. I know I tangent a lot, and for some people yeah, dude, go on your tangents. I smoke a lot of weed when I listen to you, and it's the best. And other people are like, dude, just talk about the fight. You can, this is just how I talk about fighting. This is how I think about it. It's ongoing. It's not a job. It's not quickly, tell me who's the better striker. It's just that we're exploring it constantly. So Machida taught us all those things. And the things he brought in were from a world that wasn't pulled into fighting very much, right? So, by the time we got into the early stages of putting these art forms together, we said, it's okay let's use some boxing now. We brought some boxing in. Muay Thai, that's the best one. We used that. It's like, well, we got to use singles and double legs. No, let's wrestle different. It builds and it builds and it builds. And there's seams of things where certain belief systems, like karate or kung fu or, forms of kung fu, Wing Chun, things like that, they have specialized things that we don't do. And they'll work. Everything will work if you hit somebody, or you stop them or you choke them. It works. There's no right and wrong. There's only what works or doesn't. And so he brought it from an area of specialized knowledge, and that specialized knowledge was how to draw things out of you, make you uncomfortable and uncommitted in what he drew, and then counter you. Very simple. Simple in theory. Simple to explain. When we see it, you say, we make you flinch, and you either freeze, in which case I hit you for real, or you react, in which case I know your reaction and I strike you. It's very simple in principle, but the execution, drawing that out of the man, mystifying him in the fight. And I'm not picking on Ryan Bader. I don't know why John Ramdeen picks on Ryan Bader. I don't know what the fuck Ryan Bader ever did to John Ramdeen. I like Ryan Bader, and I like these athletes, which will lead me back to Brunson, who is a fantastic athlete and combat athlete. But you see that fight with Ryan Bader, who is a play runner, an executor of plays. That's how he fights. He couldn't run those plays. He had to hesitate. And when he finally came running in on Lyoto Machida, he literally, you see, and I've done it because I've analyzed the fights in my old school tape analysis primary way, was the moment where Lyoto draws back and counters him, you see that his eyes are closed and his teeth are gritted. Because it's like, well, I don't know what the fuck to do. I just got to go for it. I just got to go. And he goes for it. And you freeze the moment in time. He's storming in, eyes closed, teeth gritted, and fucking Machida hits him, and that's it. That's beautiful, man. How do you explain that in truth? Because when I used to explain it, I would show you the footage, and I would say, and you'll see right here, he had him so confused and befuddled that his options were either stay away or throw a Hail Mary. Here's the moment in time where he throws the Hail. That's all true. But why? What did that feel like? What was the experience for Ramdeen's boy Bader? What was the experience? What did he see? What was he reading? Where were the threats? Only Ryan Bader can tell you. And he probably can't even. He can describe the anxiety that he felt. But that's what made Machida great. That happened because of his ability to play with rhythm and timing the feints. And the feinting is the feint being described as anything that I use to fake or to pretend or to lie to you in a way. And the more you see them, the more you see them. And the more it's like a sensitivity. And so the global sensitivity to that full body fake that was a part of Machida's game all grew. And Machida gave us that, all of us. So everyone has him to thank. So the long and the short of where I'm going with this is, if we all know this, when you have a conversation with a high-level coach, most of them will say, yeah, it was a lot harder to beat those guys, but over time we figure them out. Earlier, Mark and I were talking, and I used the Diaz brothers as an example. Carlos Condit beat Nick Diaz. I was just wearing a Nick Diaz shirt earlier. And outpointed him, moving away. Beautiful strategy. Unexpected strategy, because Condit is a killer and a grit and a trading type of guy. He had to supersede his own instincts, which is why it worked. Dude still takes shit about that fight. He's been in some of the most exciting fights in human history, and people still give him shit for that one. But it was what he needed to do. Then he got an interim belt, which he'll have on his wall for the rest of his life, and he got to fight George St. Pierre, presumably for one of the best paychecks he ever had. So it's what he needed to do, and that's what the artist does. It's what a good martial artist does. But after that, then RDA smashed up Nate's legs, and people were like, well, we got the book. This is the term they like to use. We got the book on the Diaz brothers right here. We're heavy on the front leg, because that's that, the way that it would have been described at the time. People would say, they're volume punchers, but to be able to throw those punches and do it at the distance they do, you've got to be heavy on the front leg. When you're heavy on the front leg, it's hard to slip back and check the kick, because you have to first shift your weight. Step one, lift the leg. Step two, whereas when your weight is distributed back, it's just step one, lift the leg, check, right? So, and now it's true, but that book is, we got the book. It better be in pencil, because you're going to have to erase some of it, because they change. These people change. That's what it is to grow. That's what growth is. It's what becoming a better artist is. I don't know if you hear anything, but there's art happening right over here. And we watch these guys. We're in an art gallery. We watch these guys, and you see Stu's work in here. And when Stu is happy, there's hearts all over the place. And when Stu's grumpy, there's skulls all over the place. It's really simple. But artists grow and change. Right? So there's no book on Nate and Nick Diaz now. Did Conor hurt him with leg kicks? Sure he did. But that Nate shifts and moves. Okay, this isn't working. Now I'll pull. Okay, he's backing up and he can't throw legs. Now I'll put weight there. He shifted and changed. He grew. Those guys, those are benefits. Those are gifts when somebody thinks they write a book on you. Because if that book exists today, you read it, and that also gives you the insights on how to beat you. So then you get the insights on how to beat anyone who believes that's true. And I know it took me a long time to say this, but that's what we would expect from Lyoto Machida. We all figured him out. So he's going to have to change. And we haven't seen him fight for a couple of years now. There was some kind of weird, I don't know, it was like a supplement or a dick pill or I don't know what it was. But it's been pointed out to me that it actually wasn't an anabolic steroid. It was some, yeah. Yeah. It's, exactly. Yeah, it was something that not only could you take and wasn't a banned substance, but probably the guy who's doing the deepest dive. So there's many ways to do your job. You can be a generalist. You can kind of just write about anything that has to do with fighting. It won't allow you to go very deep because the nature of telling every single story means you have to tell it shallow. Or you can go very deep into something. I like to go deep into different things at different times. Tape study for a couple of years. Different, big picture for a couple of years. Macro for a while. Mental. Different aspects. That's what I like to do. Over time. There's a guy, Ian Kidd. I think a lot of his stuff's on Bloody Elbow, but you can see it on Twitter. He's a guy who deep dives into these substances, into these USADA rules, all of that stuff. And somewhere in there, he pointed out that there's no even evidence that it actually helps you that much. These are some of the things that I've gathered on it anyways. So this isn't one of these guys where you're like, dude's been cheating. It's more like, yeah. Yeah, he even wrote what he was taking. And they're like, hey, wait a second, you can't take that? And he's like, what, really? Well, I wasn't lying. This is what I took. Well, you can't. Shit. So anyways, the long and the short of it is we haven't seen him for 2 years. So what would you do if nobody was seeing you for 2 years? Fucking learn some new shit. And yes, he was a specialist in that seam that the game was not good at yet. But he can do many other things. He's a brilliant martial artist. He's almost 40 years old. He's been studying for over 30 years of his life. So these things are really good, as you know. I like to go, everything I do has something to do with fighting, and that's okay by me. But I like to go on Instagram and see what Dwayne Ludwig is showing today. I like to go see what Duke Rufus is showing today, and you see great things. Bear in mind, they want you to see it. They've chosen to show it to you. When you see what Dwayne is doing in the gym, if you think you just got a one-up on Dwayne, I am here to tell you that Dwayne has made the iPhone 20, and he's only showing you the iPhone 12 on purpose, so you can get an idea, but you don't have the whole thing. So bear that in mind, whether you are a fan, an analyst, or somebody that's seeing what they're doing to get insight. Because when I took Instagram footage of George training with Freddie Roach, it was you're shooting something cool, we'll just do this. I talked about this the other day on one of the other videos. The amount of times I've witnessed prime times and these embedded and whatever, they come in. As soon as they come in, we go to the old thing we want them to see. We want to be filmed. Either it's misdirection or, I'll do some from Southpaw, even though I have no desire to move Southpaw. Or we're doing a lot of Southpaw. You're not shooting that. That's secret. So you're only seeing what they want you to see. Dwayne's iPhone 68 and you're seeing 12. Mark was saying that a lot of Lyoto Machida training with the King of Streets, Marco Huas. And that's interesting because there's a lot to be learned from looking to the past. It's great if I can do something he doesn't know. It's also great if I can do something that's been forgotten. There's a lot to be drawn from. There was a really great article, and I apologize it wasn't Jack Slack. It was one of these great writers. It wasn't Jack Slack. It wasn't Lawrence Kenshin, but it was somebody talking about the old school nature of how the Diaz brothers fight, including like taking punches off the top of their head and a number of different old school fisticuffs. You can find it pretty easily with a Google search. It wasn't Lee Wiley. There's a lot of really talented people who combine some history with some technical analysis. It was somebody who I haven't seen a lot of their work, but it was brilliant. Maybe Mark will find it. Is that what you're looking for? But if he does, we'll pass it on. But because there's a lot of things to be learned in the past. Yes, this is not the best way to fight anymore. Exclusively. But what if for a moment? What if in moments? What if in ideas? What if things that we did before, they don't work? Let's stop using them. Now, years later, in the context of everything we know today, maybe they do work. So interesting to see him go back. Expect a lot of leg kicks from Lyoto Machida, and leg kicks would be a really great thing to do against a guy like Derek Brunson, a powerhouse, a physical guy, very, very physical, strong, fast, explosive. So expect that, but expect him to be different. Will he look the same? Of course, he's Lyoto Machida. He's got the same face. He might even have the same haircut, but watch for subtle differences, because yes, it sucks to be suspended. But everything can be contextualized as a positive. We're suspended whether we are down about it or not. So let's take those 2 years in secret and become something different. So if Brunson's team is studying Machida, one of the best fights, this is one of my favorite fights. I realize I'm all over the place today. But it's one of my favorite fights is Chris Weidman against Lyoto Machida. You got 25 minutes of brilliant, because both guys are on their game. Both guys are really on their game. One thing that is hugely important for Derek Brunson and anybody that's fighting somebody like Machida is you cannot just give away the kicking game. You have to kick with him. You have to kick with the kicker. And that is, at least be a threat there. At least be a threat from that distance. At least be a threat in those moments. Otherwise, what the fuck are you going to do? Also, you got to be ready to move towards him on those kicks. You see guys get really good at that now. The foot leaves the ground and they move in, and they either take the leg or just crowd the leg. We got to do that against him. But this is a very mobile guy, and he doesn't need to knock you out. He'll piece you up. Brunson, we go quickly to look at his last 7 fights. You have a loss to Whitaker. Award-winning actor Forrest Whitaker defeated him late in the it was Robert Whitaker late in the first round, and you have him lose a decision to the great Anderson Silva in a fight that I at the time thought he won, to be honest with you, but it wasn't clean, and easily you could watch that again. I could watch that again and be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Anderson totally won 2 of those rounds, or so that's on you. You got to win that. You got to win it right. So, and outside of those 2, there are 5 knockouts, all of them in the first round. And yes, he's fast and he's strong and he's physical and he's an athlete. He's a killer athlete, but he's also skilled. The way he took out Uriah Hall, drew him over into the open space, went to the strong side. So my strong side, my power side, out here. Often we say you don't move to your left against Dan Henderson. Mike Bisping, Mike, I love you. And you avenged this, so good on you. But Mike got laid out, and as it was happening, he keeps moving to his left. Pretty soon Dan's going to clock you. But it's not like you don't ever move there. You have to move there. Something I talked about with Paulie Malignaggi. Paulie is one of the very favorites of all MMA fans. No, he's not. A lot of you hate Paulie, which is his game. He's trying to get a fight with your favorite fighter. So, but Paulie is an expert in combat, and he was talking about it's like, well, what are you going to just move there all night? If I know you're never moving that way, you're dead. You have to move both ways. It's part of fighting. You can't just move all night that way. It's the same thing with the old Southpaw versus Orthodox. I just move away. The 2 of us move over there, and then what? We just move to this, you gotta move. So you do go out into that open spot. This is my power side, but it's also my open side. And he beautifully, you go back, and I think I did a breakdown of it back then when I was over at Fight Network, but so many fights. He draws him out, and he steps out into that, and he rips him. Power, speed, but also very smart. Risk, too. Risky, but smart. And beautiful stuff. But so what happened with Brunson? Laying guys out, pinpoint, aggressive, and getting to them. Whitaker, you see him fade at about 3.5 minutes. because he starts thinking, I'm going to lay this guy out in the first round. I'm going to lay this guy out. I'm going to smash him. I got this guy. I'm going to keep it. And you just keep going. And nobody can go at 100% for sure. For 100% of exertion is very short. But 90%, 85%, whatever it is, you can't do it. There's a limit to how long you can exert at that level. And so all of a sudden he is exhausted, and Academy Award-winning actor Forrest Whitaker laid him out. Just beat him because he fatigued. So then against Anderson, they go back and they rejig it. They're like, okay, we need to be more patient. Of course, if you're more patient, that same intensity with which you get those early knockouts isn't there. That's what we pull back. So then we go 15 minutes. Was 15? Yeah, it was 15. And then we lose. So the very next fight against that killer old dude from the judo black belt in Australia. What's the guy's name? Dan Kelly. Sorry, I have a thing with names, and it's a short-term memory thing, and it probably has to do with you're not supposed to get hit in the head more than a certain amount, particularly in your 40s. But otherwise, I'm good, so don't worry. But Dan Kelly, awesome dude. It's fun to watch, too. Different. I think Elias is fighting him. That's going to be cool. They're both awkward and weird. It's going to end up being a neat fight. Against Dan Kelly, he's like, I'm going to fucking go back to what brought me to this dance. So if we remove the Anderson-Silva fight, what you have is 5 first-round knockouts and 1 late first round, he gets finished. Statistically speaking, if the strategy is going to make me win 5 out of 6 times, there aren't many things that win 5 out of 6 times. So, but are you going to do that to Machida? You know what the problem is? Nobody really lands all that clean on Machida, especially early. Go back and watch that Weidman fight, though, man. It's like when you're fighting Machida, you're dealing with sort of that stress of it. There's a stress to it. Did we talk about him laying out Ryan Bader on this one or on the one we did earlier? We had a camera problem earlier. Go back and watch the Bader one. Yeah, I think we did talk about it on this one too. But that nerves when you're fighting him, that's there. Weidman, that's one of Weidman's great performances, really, and that's the last really brilliant one out of Machida as well. So expect Machida to be different. He's very hard to touch. So it's a hard fight for Brunson. It really is. It's a really hard fight for him. Do you change your strategy, or do you say, let's burn it all. Let's take it all and burn it all and go to try to take him out early? Hard to do. Rockhold, I spoke to Rockhold the week of that fight, and he said, we talked to Ramdeen, and I asked him about Machida on the ground, and he goes, when I'm on top, I'll take care of him. And we asked about taking him down. He goes, I'm not going to take him down. I'm going to drop him. Bucker dead, too. That's impressive. That's maybe a fight to go back and study. Where did Rockhold find that time? It's commitment, too. Once you're jumpy with this guy, you're in a lot of trouble. So it's an interesting one. It's a fascinating one. Athlete, combat sportsman against artiste. It's cool. It's cool. Let's give you a couple of couple thoughts. Whatever we've got on Colby Covington versus Demian Maia. So Covington carries with him every ounce of the experience that his brother Jorge gleaned and gathered in that fight. For 15 minutes, he gathered all of this insight into Maia. That's powerful, man. That's powerful. He also heard him. They also know, we sat down, if you haven't seen it, rode with Jorge the morning after to brunch. We got 2 videos on the channel here. Jorge after Maia. He learned a lot. He's experienced it. He gathered it. He had it, with him. So it was a it was a valuable thing for him to be able to get. 1 sec. We're going to freeze it here for 1 second, and we'll be back. And just like that, an edit was made. Whoa. Yeah, dude came in. Anyways, Colby Covington and Demian Maia. We were talking about how Jorge gathered all this extra knowledge. There is no substitute for experiencing it. Jorge talked to me. He was blown away by how strong Maia was. And strength is a deceptive thing. Jorge knows this. of course, on a level that understands on a level beyond what I do. But strength, what he's talking about is physics, leverage, technique, and physical strength. And the way that you experience it is with the skill of the artist and all of his attributes. And there's no way to experience that. Jorge was surprised by a number of things about him. They're in that video where he and I have brunch. By the way, Jorge, let's have brunch on Sunday after you beat Stephen Thompson. And I would normally never say beat Stephen Thompson. I fucking love Stephen Thompson. But this one, you got this one. Actually, Covington, let's bring him too. Bring that guy. Let's have brunch. Oh, it'll be killer. Hey, we got 3 mics. Yeah, Covington. Dude, you're going to be in New York, right? You, me, and Jorge, let's hang. We'll drink some Caesars. They're a Canadian delicacy. But Jorge will have passed on the knowledge that he gathered from experiencing the truth of Demian Maia, and he passes that on to Covington. We also take a look at Colby Covington against Dong Young Kim. Dong Young Kim, like, after Maia, there's not many, like, who are at 170 pounds, who really are the best grapplers? After Maia, Kim is getting into that range. And I understand the difference between, you know, jiu-jitsu world champion and wrestler and stuff. I'm just talking in the context of fighting. There are some fights where Dong Young Kim chooses that hip ride and just grinds the shit out of you. So I'm sorry, I'm digressing, but Ramdeen and I got to call all of Dong Young Kim's early fights. And dude was walking guys in to the most hellish left hand in the game. And when he fought against, that Silva who everybody thought was on, Eric Silva. And I was going to say, as everybody thought was on the juice, because, you know, if you Google before and after, and I'm not being rude, there's other things. Trust me, there are truly other things that could have happened. Injuries and illness and hormonal imbalances, all kinds of stuff. Ian Kittle will tell you, this guy knows. But I knew he was going to knock him out with his left hand, going full commitment left hand southpaw versus southpaw. Ramdeen, that one blew Ramdeen away. And I don't make predictions a lot because they don't make a lot of sense and they often don't come true. And you're wrong even when you know. But that one, I was like, dude, man, they're going to fire left hands at each other at some point. So anyways, Kim was knocking guys out with that. And then he had a couple of moments where he needed wins and then he went back to his grinding game. And he's a fucking grinder. And people who have fought him tell you. And that fucking Colby Covington went and played his game on him. And I think he did it to be out of spite. I think he did it to be rude. He got onto Kim's hip and he, you know, stun gunned the stun gun with a vicious, dominant. And this is the thing. This is the thing about guys like this that you don't understand when you watch it. If you've been in gyms, you know, fights will help you the most. But even if you've been in gyms at high level with high level guys, when I get a chance to go grapple these days, it'll be with people way better than me. And sometimes they're fucking, you know, studs. And a lot of the time they'll let you know early, okay, this is just so there's no confusion. Let me murder you for a few rounds. And I mean just cook you. And then once that happens, then we'll pull back and let you see what you can do. George did that to me recently. It was terrible. And you're looking for small victories where it's like, I got my hips out that one time. Or I worked hard enough that he let me have this position back. You know. What's the street number here? 1686, I believe. Mullins is texting me because he's going to be up next. We are going to shoot something with Mullins that will be on the YouTube channel within the next, actually around maybe even before this one. Might be there right now. Hard to say. But it'll be soon. So Covington ground out Dong Young Kim. And what I was going to say is, I wrote 1696. He did it to be rude. And when you are in there with guys like of this level, and you experience it, it feels brutal. It's terrible. It's a horrible, horrible experience. It's one more break because people are coming in the door again. We'll be right back. All right, so there's been some edits. I don't know if you noticed, but it's been the weirdest fucking day ever here. Like, weirdest day ever. So we shoot in our art gallery, Play Dead, here in Toronto. Stu's my buddy. The mascot? Oh, yeah. So there's a mascot out front. He's actually a guy. He's been here all day. There's a dispensary next door. It got busted. When? Last couple of days? They got busted, like, recently. A guy came in here today while we were shooting. One of the reasons we stopped. Most fascinating character I've ever met. He owns a private bank, and he just bought like a whole bunch of stuff from Stu. Fascinating guy. One round glass, one square, colorful. He injured his foot, so he had a cane with Swarovski diamonds or gems, Sarkovsky, whatever. Gems all up it. And very interesting guy. And I said, what do you do? And he said, see all these cranes working on all of these condos around town? I own every one of them, which was very interesting. Bought thousands of dollars of stuff off you.
For his watch,
yeah.
it looked like a crazy watch.
Yeah, his watch was very, yeah. Then he said that he had, I loved him. He said he owned some of the original Led Zeppelin black and white photos that have been physically done. He owns originals, and it was wild. So anyways, so here's the deal. We talked about also we shot an entire episode, which then got melted on the camera. So it's been our weirdest shooting day, but it's been an incredibly fulfilling and fun and interesting one, because that's life. You go out and you meet these fascinating, colorful characters. Mullins was late because he forgot his key, so he's coming. We're going to shoot something. Mark and I went over and tried a new Heroes place, and it was really good, right? And we just kind of fucking rolled with it, because that's what you have to do sometimes, whether you're in a fight with Colby Covington or you're shooting here. So I'm going to leave it at this. We are going to come back and re-examine this fight next week. Mark's going to make some edits. If you're listening or you have just watched this, it's because Mark decided that there was enough good stuff in here to still share with you. Okay, that Mark made a decision, went back through it, and said, yeah, it's all jumpy, but there's some neat things in there, and it's fun, and that he thinks you'll like it. So if you don't like it, that's Mark's. Blame Mark, okay? He's at Mark on the air on Twitter and on Instagram, at MOULZ on 30. Moles, MOULZ 33 on Instagram. So tell him that he made a bad choice. But it has been a really fun day. I never use the word blessed. I just think it's the cheesiest thing. You see these football players and like, oh man, I'm just so blessed. You know, fuck, they say it doesn't mean anything. But I feel very lucky to have this life. We're fucking right on Queen Street, hanging around, surrounded by art and fascinating people, talking about fucking fighting. So thank you for sharing the time with me. And if you got this far and you don't already subscribe to the YouTube channel, please hit subscribe. And I swear we'll go in and we'll take some more in depth. I'm going to go review some footage on both Colby and Demian Maia's last fights and come back with some gold for you next week. If the chat with Mullins isn't up yet, it'll be up within 24 hours. And check that out. It's going to be great. Blackout.